Hello, everybody. My name is Sam Weeks. I'm a full-time admissions consultant helping people get into MBA programs. And today I am joined by Matheus, who is in the law industry, who's a lawyer before the MBA, which is going to be an interesting conversation because there aren't that many lawyers doing MBAs. And so he's in a relative minority. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Matthias, do you want to maybe start by introducing yourself?
Hello, Sam. Thank you so much for the introduction. Great to see you again. Yes, of course. So I'm a Brazilian lawyer. I worked as solicitor and barrister in Brazil for 5 years before moving to that kingdom to do my MBA here at Saïd Business School in the University of Oxford. Thanks to you, actually, who advised me over my application process.
Yeah, it was a fun process, wasn't it? And so, can we start off by, can you give us an idea of how many lawyers there are in the Oxford MBA cohort?
So in the cohort this year, I think we have about 330 people, a little bit over that. And I'm guessing, I'm not exactly sure of the numbers, but we probably have about 12 lawyers
Mhm.
or people with a legal background in general. But it's very varied. So you have people who qualified as a lawyer years ago and then were working in private equity, or there's a guy, for instance, who's also a lawyer, but he has been working with tech. He became a software developer years ago, and that's what he does up to this point. So I'd say we have 3 or 4% of people with a legal background in the class, but actually working in law. Before that, it's much less. I'd say 1, 2% at most.
Right. Okay. So I've just typed the numbers in there. Yeah, you're right. It's 3.6% of the class
Oh, nice.
are lawyers, which is a pretty small percentage, right? So for people watching, the comparison here is like consultants at top MBA programs, typically 30%, sometimes higher. I think Yale is like in the mid 40s. So 3% lawyers is a very small contingent. And so my next question for you, Matthias, is why does a lawyer need an MBA? Right? How does an MBA
Hmm.
help somebody who has a legal background to progress in their career?
I think it helps in two main ways. One is internal, and the other is external to your job. The internal thing is once you're in a law firm, you go on with your career. Eventually, you're going to have managerial tasks, and the MBA will help you tackle these issues. So you will learn a bit about accounting, marketing, sales, management, management as in company management, as well as people management, leadership skills. You develop all these traits, which are very useful to managing your own law firm, making it more efficient, making it more profitable, and also rising in your career. It also helps you with handling your clients. Because say if you're a corporate lawyer, for instance, you're sitting there with an investment banker, you're advising an M&A deal. One thing is if you learn that from the law side only. The other is if you went through an MBA, you sat in class with people who were in that industry before that. You understand what a discount cash flow model is. You understand what's like in PV. You know how to speak the jargon, and you know what the guy who was hiring you is doing and what that person wants to take out of that deal. So it makes you a better lawyer, able to provide a higher quality uh, of service to the customer. And I think there's also a third side to it, which is very important, it's sometimes overlooked. In your law profession, people who are going to hire you are people in the industry. And if you're an MBA, there's like 3% of lawyers, which means you have 97% of people who are not lawyers in the MBA cohort. These people will need lawyers in the future. And who are they going to think of first? That guy that was with them in the MBA, who they know understands law, and also knows how to manage a business or help them with their entrepreneurial goals or whatever it is that they're doing in the company they might be in. So I think there are
Super
broad
helpful
sides
for the
to it.
network.
Yeah, certainly, it's a very powerful network for sure.
Were there any classes that you found particularly useful?
Classes that I found particularly useful. I think all of them. Accounting was useful. Analytics, I think, was very, very useful. For instance, analytics is well, it's a math side that we in traditional legal degree we won't get any access to, and it does make a difference in the way you look at stuff. Gives you more of a analytical, I mean, of course, as the name implies, analytical view towards well any deal that you might be handling in a business endeavor. Helps you understand the developments in new technology. So if you're a lawyer that's working with tech companies, for instance, everybody's talking about AI nowadays. So you got to understand about analytics. You got to understand a little bit about machine learning, AI, and all these new technologies, and you're going to get that out of your MBA for sure.
Mm, nice. Interesting. It feels like it feels like that sort of broad understanding of
Mm.
wider industry and what your clients are looking for seems to be, yeah, the key factor here.
Yes, for sure, and it helps you communicate with them.
Mm.
Right? You learn to speak the same language, and you know what they're doing, and it also helps you. You have the law from without degree, like the law mindset. You look at an issue, you will look at it from the legal lenses. If you're able to add to that lenses, the tech lens, for instance, or the finance lens, or the PE lens, you see more, and you can see that again, keeping your legal lens. So you know the issues, the legal issues that might arise from that. You know what are the corner cases, where the issues might be, so you can well advise your client on what to do and how to better prepare. And it also gives you again another opportunity. You can jump to business if that's what you want eventually in the future. You can start a law firm. You can well go to be a member of company board or become a general counsel in a big company, or well, there are many other paths that open up once you have an MBA as a lawyer. And of course it's a very rare combo, so makes you a more unique professional in my view.
Interesting. Okay, so if somebody's studying or somebody's in the law industry right now, they're a lawyer now, and they're thinking about doing an MBA, and the same situation you were in, like, well, 2 or 3 years ago, you decided to focus on the UK schools, not the US. How did you come about that decision? Why did you decide to focus on the UK and Europe, not American business schools?
Several reasons. One of them is well personal. I had visited the UK about 8 years ago to do summer law school here in Oxford and Cambridge, and I absolutely loved the place. So there was a personal attraction to it. But other than that, as an international student, U.S. schools they tend to have a large chunk of American students, whereas Oxford, for instance, 97% of the cohort is international. So it does help you integrate with people and get to know more people within your MBA cohort. And I think that's an advantage that UK schools have over US schools. Also, specifically talking about Oxford, it's a 1 year degree. So you have well, opportunity costs not as big as it would be to stay 2 years in the US. And also, US schools are much more expensive than UK schools on average, even for the 2 year programs.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay, so you decided to apply to the European programs, and you applied to quite a few schools. We applied to quite a few schools together. How did you compare between the UK schools? How did you compare the UK schools, and how did you decide on Oxford?
It was a very tough decision. I got offers from four European schools, the four European schools I applied to, Oxford, Cambridge, LBS, and YESI. The first thing I did was to, well, divide them, cluster them by profile. So Oxford and Cambridge have a very similar profile. Um, and yes and LBS have also a closer profile. What happened was, at the end of the day, between Oxford and Cambridge, I had a scholarship offer from Cambridge, but it wasn't that big enough to be a deciding factor. And I like Oxford better. I can well get into that later. And between LBS and YESI, YESI is in Spain, and I'm Latin American. I'm a Brazilian, so Latin American, and I wanted to have a experience that would be more uh, a different experience. Uh, I figured that yes would be too close to what I already had at home, so I wanted to get into a very actually broaden my network more, and I believe LBS would offer this opportunity. So at the end of the day, I was having to decide between Oxford and LBS, and my ultimate decision was where I wanted to live. I figured that I had the rest of my life to live in London if I wanted to, but to live in Oxford was once in a lifetime opportunity. And also, as a lawyer, the Oxford brand is significant, so that weighted heavily on my decision. And well, I don't regret it for a second. I absolutely love being here at Saïd Business School. The place is amazing, the university is incredible, and the opportunities are also insane.
Well, you've teed up my next question perfectly. So you've been at Oxford now for a few months. What surprised you about Saïd Business School?
Not Saïd Business School or about Oxford in general.
Both.
Okay, well, Oxford in general. The most interesting thing about university. So, unlike most business schools in Oxford, you uh, it's a smaller city, so it's not as if you're in London or New York City, for instance. Uh, you also have the college system here in Oxford, which means that you get a chance to interact with people who are doing masters, DPhils in several different subjects, and that adds so much value to your overall experience. You get to participate in clubs, sports clubs, in societies. You have nice events. So, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, there was a chocolate tasting organized by the Swiss Society and the Belgian and Luxembourgish societies. So that kind of random stuff, that's so cool.
How
You get
many
to meet people
chocolates
from
did you
different
eat, you say?
cultures. Sorry?
How many chocolates did you eat?
Well, more than I should have, that's for sure. But it was very nice, and we had a fun competition. So the chocolates were not labeled. You had to guess what they were made from and whether they were Belgian or Swiss. So it was a very fun evening. That kind of experience you won't have anywhere else, I think. We had the formal dinners, and on those events, you get to meet a lot of interesting people, both undergrads and postgrads, um, doing all sorts of state-of-the-art research in chemistry, biology, physics, math, statistics, finance. The range is really very significant. History as well. There are so many cool history research here. And you get to know a lot. It gives you a more comprehensive view of the world due to the opportunity that you get to interact with all these people here at the university. So I think that would be certainly something that impressed me. I was already expecting a little bit, but it is much better than what I anticipated.
Yeah, I remember from my time at Oxford where there's not many places where you can unironically wear white tie, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
most places in the world, if you wear white tie, it's like fancy dress for a party. But at Oxford, you genuinely like I wore my white tie, black tie several times, like a month, because there's so many formal dinners that you get dressed up for. There's so many the balls, the school ball, the college balls that they host. Absolutely insane, aren't they?
yeah, no, it's amazing. Especially during Michaelmas last term. At some point, I wouldn't even get my suit and my tuxedo back in the closet. People would be wearing it like 2 or 3 times a week during those events. That was very nice. Oh, and you also asked me about what impressed me the most about Saïd Business School. And about SBS specifically, what I think is one of the highlights of this year um, is that people are very, very, very nice. Out of the 340 people in the cohort, everybody is nice, gentle, people are willing to help, people are sociable. So you can always, well, pick up your phone, call someone from the cohort, say, hey, and I need help with this or that, or let's go and have a chat, or you just bump into people in the street. So the other day I was walking back home from a meeting. Uh, well, just in the middle of the street, we bumped into a couple of friends. We started chatting, and then other friends bumped into us again, and then we all kept chatting. And when we stopped and looked at it, it had been like an hour or so, an hour and a half, just in the middle of the street, talking to people that were coming and going, and bumping into us literally in the middle of the street, right? By Worcester College. So it's a very fun experience, and people are very, very, very nice. That's certainly a significant highlight, and something that everybody in the cohort is very grateful for. So we go back to Michael. We also thank the admissions committee because we believe they did a very nice job in selecting well, cool people to be here in this year, and everybody's so happy about it.
You have 330 out of 330 who are nice. You're doing quite well. When we had a
Yes.
couple who we wouldn't have we wouldn't have necessarily chosen out of the 330, but no, it sounds like you're doing really
Yeah.
well. Um,
No, that was certainly very impressive for us. No one was expecting that, but of course, I mean, we're expecting normal distribution, right? And I know you were facing something that
there's always
wasn't
going to be
like
a
that.
few bad apples, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing that there aren't this year, and that is really impressive. When I talk to friends who are doing MBAs in different business schools, and I tell them this, they just can't believe it. It's like, no, no, it's not possible. I mean, it's a very large group of people. Like, yes, I know that, but people here are very, very nice. That's the thing.
That's fantastic. So, okay, one of the things that you mentioned this earlier, one of the things that stood out about your application process, not only the success in getting admits, as you said, you got admits to ESA, LBS, Oxford, and Cambridge. There's also scholarships. You had a couple of scholarships come through, I believe. Can you tell us about how you got scholarships so people watching can understand what they need to do to get scholarships?
I got a scholarship from Cambridge.
Mhm.
So basically, what happened was I had all these offers, and I was trying to decide. So I informed Cambridge of the other offers that I had, and they offered me, I think it was a 10 grand scholarship. Um, that was it. That effectively give some advice to people. I ended up deciding for Oxford, even though I had a scholarship from Cambridge, because it wasn't big enough to make me change my mind. And I think it is something that, well, over time would kind of like disappear after the MBA. I mean, it's not 10K and the MBA that's going to make a huge difference when it's such a life-changing decision. If it was more significant, might have shifted my decision, but it wasn't. Um, but my biggest advice for people looking for scholarships is, well, negotiate early, because schools, they have a limited amount of scholarships they can offer, and you have to move fast if you want to get it. So if you're one of the first movers, your chances of getting a scholarship are higher. Uh, Also, don't let schools know that you have 100% made up your mind to go there, because then they know, well, I mean, I know this guy's coming here even if we don't give him a scholarship. So yeah, we're not going to do that. So there's no incentive, right? So you have to tell them you want to go there. Of course, it's part of the application process, but don't be too eager about that at first. I think that's a mistake I made at Oxford. I think the admissions committee knew I was 100% down to coming here. It was uh, top choice for me,
Spoken
and I
like a
think
true
that kind of like
lawyer.
played it in. Yeah, exactly. They knew the facts that came into play, right? That's their job, and they're very good at it. So yeah, I
So
think that'd be
what you're
my two key
saying is,
advices.
so you weren't initially offered a scholarship by Cambridge, but you went back because
Yeah,
you had multiple offers. You went back to Cambridge, and in fact, we went back to Cambridge. I was involved in this. We went back to Cambridge
yeah,
and we said, "Hey, we've got other offers. Can you give us a scholarship to make this an easier decision?" And
yeah,
ultimately, they did come back. In your case, 10K, relatively small number, and wasn't
yeah.
enough to swing it for you. And what you're saying is you could, if you'd done that sooner and started the negotiation process sooner, you're saying you think maybe you would have got maybe more from from Cambridge, maybe more from Oxford, maybe more
Yeah.
from other schools.
Precisely. That's exactly it.
Okay, good. So besides the scholarship stuff, then what would you have done differently if you were to go through the MBA application process all over again?
What would I have done differently? I think I would have moved. Okay, I would have decided to do an MBA more time in advance. So
Mhm.
I actually decided to apply 1 month, literally 1 month before the deadline
I know.
for my
I remember
application.
the
So it
call.
was, yeah, it was crazy intense. I had never done a GMAT before. I only had like 3 days to study for the GMAT, which was absolutely crazy, especially coming from a legal background. It was a completely different exam. I mean, there are no other words that I could use to describe it other than 100% out of my comfort zone. So that was very intense, and I was working at the time, so I had my legal duties. I had a hearing, I had business trips, and all that in between. So I'll definitely tell people to prepare in advance. Think ahead. Applications, they start usually by July, August. So yeah, we're in March now, by the end of March, so people still have time to prepare and organize the application, have time with the consultant. Also, another key thing is the interview process is intense. So if you have time to sit down with the consultant and talk uh, that thoroughly, it's better to do that in advance, because when the interviews are going on, people are going to be busy. You're going to have less time to do that. So yeah, just start preparing in advance. I think that'd be the thing I'll do differently
I'd
and have more
certainly
peace of mind.
Yeah, I'd certainly echo that across other clients. Like it's one of the consistent factors that we see people who are successful in applying to MBA programs, they allow enough time. And actually, you say, we allowed a month. A month is actually not that bad. I think anything less than a month is really, really stressful. I think you left just enough time to be able to put your best foot forward, not have to take any shortcuts. Anybody watching here, please don't try not to allow less than a month with the application process. And then I completely agree with you. If you, by going through that process in full to create your narrative, that already gives you a head start when it comes to interviewing. So when you're asked about your motivations, you've obviously spent all that time with your consultant preparing those stories, and it's really nice to have that stuff ready to tell in your interviews. Really, really nice. Okay, one other question I had for you, Matthias, which is obviously Oxford is in the United Kingdom. The UK is in the news a lot at the moment. You know, Brexit, immigration rule changes, all this kinds of stuff. How is recruiting in the UK right now for MBA students?
For the UK right now, it's kind of intense. The recruiting that I'm doing is different than the recruiting that most people in my cohort are doing, because I'm looking more into law firms in general. Uh, but what the general feeling is that the top jobs in the UK is a very competitive market, right? You have people from all over the world, highly qualified people wanting to get jobs. So it's tough. Most people are securing very nice jobs either back in their geography or in other geographies. The UK is for sure the hardest place to get a nice job. And one of the key things is the network. Uh, the better the network you were able to develop here in the UK, the easier your recruiting process will be. So that's something to start from day one, even before you come to the MBA program in the UK. It's nice to really reach out to people, see what recruiters are looking for, see how we can fit into whatever this is you're looking for in the industries that you're searching. And keep in mind that you're going to change your mind a lot during your program. People very often people come to the MBA thinking they want to get a job in IB or PE or tech, for instance. And as time goes by, they change their minds. They see that there's something they like more than that, or that the reality is not as or as nice as they believed originally to be. So, well, that's something that people should keep in mind. And that is okay, right? It's not a big deal to change your mind during your MBA. It's very common. Everybody knows it happens. The school knows that happens. Recruiters know that happens. So yeah, you can just chill, enjoy your time, and do the most out of it.
Yeah, especially because Oxford's a 1 year program, as you said, lower
Yeah.
opportunity cost, but it does mean you have less time to, for example, build a network, internships, etc.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's for sure. A 1 year program it's definitely is intense on the recruiting side because you have less time. So usually in 2 year programs, people are going to be the first year, figuring out what exactly it is that they want to do, getting to know the place, and the second year they're more focused on recruiting. Oxford, I think, has an issue, which is you have only 1 year to do both, and on top of that, you have much more to do than a regular business school would have because you have a broader university around you with all these conferences, all these events, and these things to do. So you have like boat club, for instance, which is a very common thing. Most people are engaged at boat club. We have people in the cohort who are
You mean rowing?
the glove rowing, yeah, rowing. You have people in golf, in water polo and clay pigeon shooting. So they're like random stuff that you're gonna do. So in Oxford, it's tougher. Um, Getting back to your question on the 1 year program, if you already know what it is that you want, it is much easier. So try to sort it out beforehand. But again, do keep in mind that once you start your program, you might change your mind. And the only thing that you can't do is stay still. And as long as you're moving, you have an Oxford brand, you made it here. It's not easy to be admitted, so people know you're a good professional. Eventually, something's going to show up. So yeah, just keep looking, and things will sort out eventually. Don't There's no need to be very nervous about it.
Great. Can I ask a question about consulting, working with a consultant? You mentioned
Mm-hmm.
alluded to it a little bit before, and we talked about the benefit of the
Uh-huh.
time management. What other benefits would you point to, or what sort of you as you look back at our work together?
Mm-hmm.
What other benefits of the experience or downsides? Like what other factors of working with a
Mm-hmm.
consultant stand out for you?
I think there are two things. One is helping you tell your story because once you're in your own story, you get a chance to look at it from the outside perspective. You have a hard time putting it into words. So once you're talking to a consultant, to an extent, it's kind of like a psychologist, right? I will tell you my story, and then you would look at it objectively and say, hey, so it's this, that, and that. That's how it went, right? So that would help me out a lot to organize and structure it in a logical sense for an external observer and to make it concise. That's one thing that helped me, and that's very, very valuable. And the other thing is interview prep. Um, I think remember that was like the key thing for me because the way interviews are handled in MBA programs, it is very different than what happens in normal job interviews, especially back in Brazil. So getting used to it was very intense. I was very nervous about it. But it's actually interesting because the first interview I did was the Oxford interview, and I was very, very nervous about it. The last interview I did, it lasted, I think it was a half an hour of an interview, something like that. The last interview I did was LBS. It was 2 hours and a half of an interview, so it was very intense.
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours, yes.
Wow.
They went through my whole life, my whole CV, asked everything. It was very intense. And but the funny thing is, I was less nervous in the LBS interview, which was the last one, because I've already done like three other interviews, sorry. So things went smoothly. I also had a conversation with the interviewer. I knew my story. It was well, but in my mind, where I was, where I wanted to go, and how the MBA helped me reach those goals. What I would add to the university, what the university would add to me. So all of that was very organized and structured. And the more interviews you do, the easier it gets. Of course, you get used to it. You get more relaxed as well, which also is very significant. And having a good outcome.
Totally right. And that's why our package clients have 4 mock interviews in the process so that you can interview with different members of the team, get that new face experience. And as you say, get rid of some of those nerves, burn some of those nerves so that when it comes to the first, your actual first real interview, you are able to perform well. And it sounds like you performed well in the first place because you got the Oxford offer, even though it was your first interview. So that's awesome.
Oh yeah, and thank you so much for that. You helped me a lot with the interview process. I remember I think we had like 3 or 4 mock interviews for the Oxford application. It was very nice, and it was very peculiar because interviews are usually well handled by different people. So I think that for Oxford it was industry advisor. So my interviewer was a retired MD from a big U.S. investment bank. Um, for Cambridge, it was a member of faculty. Um, for Yassi, we had a group interview, so I had to travel to São Paulo to do that. It was a group dynamics. We had to analyze the case and present it. And for LBS, it was alumni that was interviewing me. He went to LBS, I think like 6 or 7 years ago, and he was working back in Brazil, and he did a video call about a year ago. So it was very interesting, different kinds of interviewers, different dynamics, different questions asked, but they always have the same general and then broad idea. So yeah, you just get used to it if you're relaxed and go with it. And in the Oxford one, especially, I remember I tried not to show to the interviewer that I was very nervous. But I think even through the camera, that was kind of clear. When I looking back, I was kind of shivering, but it was okay. Got the offer. Was
It's
a
really
happy day.
unusual, actually. It's interesting you say that. It's really unusual that you interviewed with all the possible interviewers. Different schools have a different setup. Like you say, alumni, faculty, admissions officers, and through the just chance, the different schools that you applied to, you actually did each of the different types of interview. So I'm not surprised there was quite a lot of nerves involved. That's an unusual dynamic that you went through. It's cool to see. Okay, one last thing that I'd like to do, Matthias. This is becoming a tradition in my video interviews. Quite nerdy, but I think it's all right. Can I get a high five?
Oh yes, of course.
High five. Really, really well done. Hey, Matthias, it's an absolute pleasure to
Thanks.
speak to you. Thank you so much for sharing your advice about the Oxford MBA, about your application process, about what it's like to be a lawyer in the MBA world. Really, really valuable, and I think people are gonna love the interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sam. I'm happy to help. And if anyone wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn, have a chat about lawyers doing MBAs, well, feel free to contact me.
That's super kind of you. We'll put your link to your LinkedIn URL beneath the video.
Description. Amazing. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely day.
Bye. You too. Bye bye.